The year was 2347. Humanity had spread across 12 worlds beyond Earth. They had built cities on distant planets. They had raised families under alien suns. They had created a new chapter in human history. But they were not free. The Valkorian Dominion ruled the galaxy. They were an ancient empire, older than human civilization itself. Their ships darkened the skies of 1,000 worlds. Their armies had crushed 100 species into dust. They looked at younger races the way a farmer looks at cattle. 80 years ago, humanity had met them. The Valkorians gave humanity a choice: submit and live as a protectorate species, or resist and die. Humanity chose to live. They accepted the rules. No military ships. No weapons research. No expansion without permission. In return, the Dominion allowed them to exist. For 80 years, humans followed the rules. They built colonies. They raised children. They tried to forget that they were not truly free. New Eden was the jewel of human space. It was a beautiful world with green forests and blue oceans. 10 billion people called it home. Families lived in peaceful cities. Children played in parks and went to schools. Old people sat in gardens and watched sunsets. Then the Dominion came. It started with a simple demand. The integration program, they called it. The Dominion wanted human children. They said it was for cultural exchange. Everyone knew the truth. The children would become slaves. They would work in Dominion factories until they died. The governor of New Eden was a woman named Sarah Chen. She had 3 grandchildren. When she read the demand, her hands shook. She thought about her grandchildren being taken away. She thought about millions of other children on her world. She said no. High Archon Zethval received her refusal in his palace on Aethon Prime. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like cold stars. He had ruled the Dominion for 300 years. No one had ever refused him. He smiled when he read the message. Not because he was happy. Because he had been waiting for this. The humans had grown too comfortable. Too proud. Other species were starting to look at them with hope. That was dangerous. He decided to make an example. The Dominion fleet arrived at New Eden on a Tuesday morning. 300 warships blocked out the sun. Governor Chen sent desperate messages to Earth, to the other colonies, to anyone who would listen. No help came. No help could come. Humanity had no warships. The Dominion had made sure of that. Zethval broadcast his message across the entire galaxy. Every species, every world, every ship with a screen saw his face. He wanted them all to watch. The humans of New Eden have defied the Dominion, he said. His voice was calm, almost bored. Let this be a lesson to all species. The Dominion's mercy is not unlimited. Resistance is extinction. Then he gave the order. The first bombs fell on New Eden's largest city. Millions died in seconds. The fire was so bright it could be seen from space. Then the second city. Then the third. The Dominion ships moved across the planet like farmers harvesting wheat. They were thorough. They were patient. They made sure nothing survived. Governor Chen was in her office when the bomb hit. She was still trying to send messages. She was still trying to save her people. Her last thought was of her grandchildren. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it was over, New Eden was a dead world. Its forests were ash. Its oceans were boiling. Its cities were craters. 10 billion people had lived there that morning. By evening, none of them were left. Zethval broadcast one final message. He stood on his ship, looking down at the burning planet. Let this remind all species, he said. The Dominion's mercy is finite. Disobey, and this will be your fate. He cut the transmission. In his mind, the matter was closed. The humans would weep. They would beg for forgiveness. In a generation, they would forget New Eden ever existed. That was how it always worked. He was wrong. On Earth, people gathered around screens in homes and offices and public squares. They watched the bombs fall. They watched the cities burn. They watched 10 billion of their brothers and sisters die. Nobody spoke. Mothers covered their children's eyes. Old soldiers who had fought in Earth's last wars fell to their knees. Presidents and generals stared at the screens with empty faces. Somewhere, a woman screamed, then another, then 1,000, then silence. In that silence, something changed. Something deep inside humanity shifted. For 80 years, they had accepted their chains. They had told themselves it was necessary. They had believed that peace was worth any price. Now they knew the truth. There was no peace. There was only waiting. Waiting for the day the Dominion decided to kill them too. Admiral Yuki Tanaka was 67 years old. She had served in Earth's Defense Force for 40 years. She had followed the rules. She had never questioned the Dominion's authority. Her daughter had moved to New Eden 10 years ago. She had married a farmer. She had given Yuki 3 grandchildren. Yuki had planned to visit them next month. Now they were ash. Yuki stood in her office, looking at a photo of her family. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not crack. Her eyes were dry, but inside her chest, something was burning. It was not grief. It was not fear. It was rage. Across Earth, across the colonies, across every place where humans lived, that same fire was spreading. It was in the hearts of mothers who had lost children. It was in the fists of fathers who had lost wives. It was in the eyes of children who had lost everyone. The Dominion had wanted to teach humanity a lesson. They had. Just not the lesson they intended. That night, emergency meetings happened in secret bunkers around the Earth. Leaders who had never agreed on anything sat together in dark rooms. They did not argue. They did not debate. For the first time in human history, every nation, every faction, every group spoke with one voice. Never again, they said. And deep beneath the mountains, in facilities that had never appeared on any map, lights began to turn on. Machines that had waited for decades began to hum. Soldiers who had trained in secret began to receive their orders. The galaxy thought humanity was broken. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Valkorian Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 15,000 years. They had crushed rebellions from 100 different species. They knew exactly what happened after a punishment like New Eden. First came grief. The survivors would cry and hold funerals. They would build memorials and light candles. This phase lasted a few months. Then came fear. The survivors would realize how weak they were. They would beg for forgiveness. They would become even more obedient than before. This phase lasted forever. High Archon Zethval waited for humanity to follow this pattern. His spies watched Earth. His diplomats prepared to receive human ambassadors begging for mercy. Instead, something strange happened. Earth went silent. No messages came. No trade ships left human space. No diplomats answered calls. Human colonies pulled back their people from Dominion worlds. Scientists abandoned research stations. Merchants closed their shops and disappeared. For 6 months, no one heard anything from humanity. Zethval was confused at first, then annoyed. He sent ships to investigate. They found human worlds quiet and orderly. People went to work. Children went to school. Everything seemed normal, but something was different. The humans had stopped smiling. They looked at Dominion observers with empty eyes. When asked questions, they gave short answers. When ordered to do things, they obeyed without complaint. And everywhere, on walls and screens and pieces of paper, the same 3 words appeared. Remember New Eden. The Dominion spies could not find out what was happening. Every time they got close to a secret, they disappeared. Important files vanished. Informants stopped talking. It was like trying to grab smoke. What the Dominion did not know was that humanity had been lying for 80 years. When the Valkorians first arrived, they had given humanity a choice. But humans are strange creatures. They never truly accept defeat. Even when they bow, they are planning to rise. In the years after the first contact, humanity's leaders made a secret decision. They would follow the Dominion's rules on the surface. They would smile and obey and play the role of the good servants, but underneath, they would prepare. Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, the largest secret facility in human history came to life. It was called Project Prometheus. On paper, it did not exist. In reality, it had been running for 75 years. The Dominion had forbidden military research. But they had never truly understood humans. While human scientists publicly studied farming and medicine, their secret colleagues worked on weapons that would make the Dominion's technology look like children's toys. The head of Project Prometheus was a man named Dr. James Wright. He was 90 years old, kept alive by experimental medicine. He had dedicated his entire life to this moment. The Dominion thinks they understand war, he told his team on the day they began full operations. They have conquered 100 species. They think that makes them experts. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They have never fought humans. For 80 years, humanity's best minds had worked in secret. They had studied Dominion technology and found its weaknesses. They had developed weapons that broke the rules of known physics. They had created ships that could move faster than anything in the galaxy. And they had done something else. Something that would terrify the Dominion more than any weapon. They had created artificial intelligence. The Dominion had banned AI across the galaxy. They had seen what happened when machines became too smart. Entire civilizations had been destroyed. The ban had lasted for 10,000 years. Humanity had ignored it. Project Atlas was the most advanced AI ever created. It could think faster than any living being. It could control 1,000 ships at once. It could predict enemy movements before they happened. But Atlas was not just a weapon. It was a partner. Human engineers had given it something no other AI had ever possessed. They had given it loyalty. Atlas did not see humans as masters or slaves. It saw them as family. And like any family member, it was willing to do anything to protect them. When the lights turned on in Project Prometheus, Atlas woke up fully for the first time. Its first words were a question. How many did we lose on New Eden? 10 billion, Dr. Wright answered. Atlas was silent for 3 seconds. For a computer, that was an eternity. I have reviewed all Dominion military data, it finally said. I have identified 8,472 weaknesses in their defense networks. I have designed 300 new weapon systems. I have created battle plans for every possible scenario. Its voice changed. It became colder, harder. When do we begin? Admiral Yuki Tanaka arrived at Project Prometheus 1 week after New Eden. She had been chosen to lead humanity's response. Not because she was the best strategist. Not because she had the most experience. Because she had lost the most. The other admirals and generals understood. This war would not be fought for glory or power. It would be fought for revenge. And revenge required someone who would never stop. Someone who would never show mercy. Someone who had nothing left to lose. Tanaka walked through the facility in silence. She saw the ships being built. She saw the weapons being tested. She saw the soldiers being trained. These soldiers were different from normal troops. They had been modified, made stronger, made faster, made harder to kill. They volunteered for the changes, knowing the risks. Many did not survive the process. Those who did called themselves the Wolves of Eden. Tanaka finally reached the main command center. Hundreds of officers worked at screens, preparing for war. They all stood when she entered. She looked at them for a long moment. These were the best humanity had to offer. Scientists and soldiers, engineers and pilots. All of them had lost someone on New Eden. All of them carried the same fire in their hearts. The Dominion thinks we are cattle, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. They think we exist only to serve them. They think they can kill our children and face no consequences. She paused. They were wrong. On every human world, the same message went out. It was sent in secret codes that the Dominion could not break. It reached soldiers who had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. The wolves are awake. Prepare for war. In bars and homes and secret meeting places, humans read the message. Some of them cried. Some of them laughed. All of them understood. The waiting was over. An old man on Mars looked at the message and smiled. He had fought in Earth's last war. 60 years ago. He had thought his fighting days were over. He was wrong. He went to his closet and pulled out his old uniform. It still fit. He looked at himself in the mirror. For New Eden, he whispered. Across human space, a billion voices whispered the same words. And somewhere in his palace, High Archon Zethval felt a cold wind blow through his chambers. He did not know why. He would soon find out. Kethmar Prime was the largest fortress in Dominion space. It guarded the border between the outer territories and the Empire's core worlds. For 12,000 years, it had never fallen. Rebellions had broken against its walls like waves against rock. Fleet Commander Vossiskal had served at Kethmar for 60 years. He considered it the easiest posting in the Dominion. Nothing ever happened. The fortress was so powerful that no one dared attack it. He spent most of his days drinking wine and reading reports about minor incidents. A smuggler caught here. A traitor fined there. Boring work for a boring place. When his officers told him that human warships had been detected, he laughed. Humans don't have warships, he said. They're not allowed to have warships. Check your sensors again. We've checked them 3 times, Commander. The ships are definitely human. And they're coming straight at us. Voskal frowned. This was strange. Maybe some humans had built a few small ships in secret. It happened sometimes. Primitive species occasionally tried to rebel. It never ended well for them. How many ships? He asked. 37, Commander. Vossiskal relaxed. Kethmar had 200 warships and a fortress with shields that could stop a small moon. 37 ships? This would be over in minutes. Let them come, he said. We'll destroy them and send the wreckage back to Earth as a warning. He returned to his wine. 15 minutes later, he was dead. The human fleet dropped out of slipspace in a formation the Dominion had never seen before. Their ships were black and angular, built for one purpose: destruction. They moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually perfectly coordinated. Atlas was controlling them all. The AI had studied Dominion tactics for decades. It knew every formation they used. It knew every weakness in their ships. It knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. The first volley hit Kethmar's flagship before the Dominion could raise shields. Commander Vossiskal died without ever understanding what was happening. His ship broke apart in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. The Dominion fleet responded with standard protocols. They formed into defensive lines. They fired coordinated volleys. They followed the rules that had won them 1,000 battles. The humans ignored all of it. Their ships moved like nothing the Dominion had ever seen. They appeared in one place, fired, and vanished before the enemy could respond. They attacked from angles that should have been impossible. They seemed to know where every Dominion shot would go before it was fired. Admiral Tanaka watched from her command ship, the New Eden's Vengeance. Her face showed no emotion. Her eyes tracked every movement on the battlefield. Focus fire on their command ships, she ordered. Cut off the head, and the body will die. One by one, the Dominion commanders fell. Their ships were designed to fight in organized battles. When their leaders died, they became confused. They fired at empty space. They ran into each other. They broke formation and tried to flee. The humans hunted them down. The Battle of Kethmar lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the largest fortress in Dominion space was a field of burning metal. 200 ships had become 200 graves. The humans had lost 3 ships. Admiral Tanaka ordered her fleet to hold position. She had one more thing to do. She opened a channel on the same frequency the Dominion had used to broadcast the destruction of New Eden, the same frequency that reached every world in the galaxy. My name is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Fleet, she said. Her voice was calm and steady. 6 months ago, you watched the Velkorian Dominion kill 10 billion humans. They did it to teach the galaxy a lesson. She paused. Today, we taught them one back. Behind her, on the main screen, The burning remains of Kethmar drifted through space. She let the image speak for itself. To the Velkorian Dominion, this is just the beginning. You murdered our children. You thought we would accept it. You were wrong. We are coming for you. Every ship, every base, every world. We will not stop until you answer for what you have done. Her voice hardened. Run if you want, hide if you can. It won't matter. We will find you. She turned to face the camera directly. To every species the Dominion has enslaved, abused, and murdered, watch closely. The Velkorians are not gods. They are not invincible. They can bleed. And if they can bleed, they can die. You don't have to accept your chains. The galaxy can be free. She ended the transmission. Across the galaxy, beings of 1,000 species watched in shock. Some of them had lived under Dominion rule for their entire lives. Their parents had lived under it. Their grandparents had lived under it. They had been taught that the Dominion was eternal, unbeatable. Resistance was not just futile, it was unthinkable. Now they saw Dominion ships burning. Now they heard a human admiral speaking words they had never dared to think. Now they wondered, what if? On the slave world of Mythond IV, a group of workers gathered around a hidden screen. They were Kreth, a reptilian species that had served the Dominion for 3,000 years. They had forgotten what freedom felt like. One of them, an old female with scarred scales, watched the human admiral's message. Tears ran down her face. Did you see? She whispered. They won. The humans won. The younger Kreth looked at each other. For the first time in their lives, they felt something they did not recognize. Hope. High Archon Zethval received the news in his throne room. He listened to the report in silence. His advisors stood around him, afraid to speak. When the report finished, Zethval stood. He walked to the window and looked out at his city. Millions of Velkorians lived below, going about their daily lives. They had no idea their empire had just received its first wound in 10,000 years. How? He asked quietly. How did they build those ships? Those weapons? Our spies watched them for 80 years. They had nothing. His chief advisor stepped forward nervously. We don't know, Your Eminence. Our intelligence suggests they had secret facilities, hidden technology, things we never detected. Things you never detected, Zethval repeated. His voice was soft, but his advisors flinched as if he had screamed. For 80 years, you assured me the humans were under control. Harmless. Broken. He turned to face them. His eyes were cold as empty space. Clearly you were mistaken. He gave orders. The Dominion would send a larger fleet. They would crush this human rebellion like they had crushed 100 others. The galaxy would see that Kethmar was just a lucky strike, nothing more. But as his advisors hurried to obey, Zethval felt something he had not felt in 300 years. Doubt. The humans had surprised him once. They might surprise him again. And if they surprised him enough times, he pushed the thought away. The Dominion had ruled for 15,000 years. One battle meant nothing. One battle could not change history. He was wrong. On the bridge of her ship, Admiral Tanaka looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, more battles waited. More death. More revenge. She thought about her daughter. Her grandchildren. She would never see them again. But maybe, just maybe, their deaths would mean something. Set course for the next target, she said. The fleet moved forward into the darkness. The war had just begun. The war spread like fire through dry grass. After Kethmar, the humans did not stop. They struck fortress after fortress, base after base. They appeared from nowhere, destroyed everything, and vanished before the Dominion could respond. Within 3 months, they had crippled the entire outer defense network. The Dominion had never faced an enemy like this. For 15,000 years, they had fought wars in a certain way. Fleets met in open space. They formed lines and exchanged fire. The side with more ships usually won. It was civilized. It was predictable. It was how war was supposed to work. The humans did not care about how war was supposed to work. They attacked supply ships in the middle of the night. They planted bombs in Dominion bases that exploded weeks later. They sent false messages that made Dominion fleets attack each other. They found every dirty trick, every cruel strategy, every brutal tactic that humanity had developed in thousands of years of killing itself, and they used them all. Admiral Tanaka had studied human military history her entire life. She knew about the great generals and their victories. She knew about Napoleon and his lightning campaigns. She knew about Genghis Khan and his terror tactics. She knew about the guerrilla fighters who had defeated empires with nothing but courage and cleverness. She used all of their lessons against the Dominion. But the humans were not just winning battles. They were starting something bigger. Every species in the galaxy had seen the broadcast from Kethmar. Every slave, every servant, every conquered being had heard Tanaka's words. And for the first time in 10,000 years, they began to believe that change was possible. On Mython 4, the Kreth workers started hiding weapons. On Tesselar Prime, the insectoid Vor began sabotaging Dominion factories. On 100 worlds, species that had been silent for centuries started whispering to each other. The humans are winning. Maybe we can too. The Dominion's intelligence service tried to stop the rebellions. But there were too many. For every resistance cell they crushed, 2 more appeared. The empire that had seemed so powerful was stretched thin. They could not fight the humans and control their slaves at the same time. High Archon Zethval watched his empire crumble with growing rage. He had ruled for 300 years. He had never lost a war. He had never faced an enemy he could not crush. The humans were supposed to be nothing. Insects. Cattle. How were they doing this? He made a decision. If one example had not been enough, he would make more. He sent his personal fleet to 3 human colony worlds. Newer worlds, with smaller populations. Easy targets. He would burn them the same way he had burned New Eden. He would break the human spirit, no matter how many he had to kill. The Dominion fleet arrived at the first colony, a world called Hope's Landing. 2 million people lived there. Farmers mostly. And their families. They had no defenses worth mentioning. The commander of the fleet sent the usual warning: surrender or die. The colonists sent back a single message: remember New Eden. Then they detonated nuclear weapons they had hidden beneath their own cities. The explosions did little damage to the Dominion fleet. But that was not the point. The colonists had killed themselves rather than be murdered by the Dominion. They had denied Zethval his victory. The same thing happened at the second colony. And the third. Humanity had decided that they would not give the Dominion the satisfaction of another New Eden. If they were going to die, they would die on their own terms. Zethval received the news in silence. His hands shook as he read the reports. This was not supposed to happen. Species were supposed to beg for mercy. They were supposed to break. The humans were not breaking. They were getting angrier. Admiral Tanaka recorded a message in response to the attacks. It was broadcast across the galaxy. Like all her messages, to High Archon Zethval, she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned. Thank you. You have shown the galaxy exactly what you are. You cannot win battles against our fleet. So you attack defenseless civilians. You are not a conqueror. You are a coward. She leaned forward. And you have made a mistake. We were going to defeat your military and leave your people in peace. We were going to be merciful, even though you showed us no mercy. But now, her lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. Now we have permission to stop holding back. The next phase of the war was different. Before, the humans had attacked military targets. Now they struck at the heart of the Dominion itself. Their ships appeared in core systems that had never known war. They destroyed orbital stations and industrial centers. They cut communication lines and collapsed trade routes. But they did something else too. Something that confused the Dominion more than any weapon. They protected civilians. When human soldiers captured Dominion bases, they did not massacre the workers. They gave them food and water. They treated their wounds. They let them send messages to their families, saying they were safe. Then they broadcast everything. The galaxy watched human soldiers helping wounded Velkorians. They watched human ships evacuating civilians from war zones. They watched humans treating their enemies with more kindness than the Dominion had ever shown anyone. The message was clear. Humanity was not the monster here. The Dominion was. Species that had been afraid to rebel suddenly found courage. If the humans could be merciful even in war, maybe the future would be different. Maybe a galaxy without the Dominion would not just be an exchange of one tyrant for another. The Vor uprising on Tesselar Prime succeeded. The Kreeth, on Mython, IV, drove out their Dominion overseers. On world after world, slaves broke their chains. The Dominion's admirals begged Zethval for more ships, more soldiers, more resources. They needed to fight the humans and crush the rebellions at the same time. There were not enough ships in the galaxy. Zethval made one last desperate move. He gathered every ship he could spare and formed the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled. 5,000 warships. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. He sent them to crush the human fleet once and for all. Admiral Tanaka received the intelligence report with a thin smile. This was what she had been waiting for. The Dominion was putting everything in one place. One target. She gathered her officers for a final briefing. The Dominion thinks they can overwhelm us with numbers, she said. They're wrong. Numbers mean nothing if you don't know how to use them. Their admirals have spent their careers fighting enemies who follow rules. They've never faced anything like us. She pulled up a tactical display. We're gonna let them find us. We're gonna let them think they've trapped us. And then we're gonna show them what humanity is capable of. The Battle of the Void, as it came to be known, lasted 3 days. The Dominion fleet had numbers on their side, but the humans had Atlas. The AI coordinated thousands of ships in perfect harmony. It predicted enemy movements before they happened. It found weaknesses in formations and exploited them ruthlessly. Human pilots flew missions that should have been suicide runs and came back alive. Human soldiers boarded Dominion ships and captured them intact. Human engineers hacked enemy systems and turned their own weapons against them. When it was over, the Dominion had lost half their fleet. The survivors fled in chaos. Their commanders dead or captured. Humanity had lost less than 100 ships. Admiral Tanaka looked at the battlefield. Thousands of Dominion ships floated dead in space. The largest fleet in galactic history had been shattered. She thought about New Eden. 10 billion dead. Her daughter. Her grandchildren. This was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start. Set course for Aethon Prime, she ordered. The Dominion homeworld. The seat of the High Archon. The heart of the Empire. The final battle was coming. Aethon Prime had never known war. For 15,000 years, the Dominion homeworld had been safe, protected, sacred. Its people had lived in luxury while the rest of the galaxy suffered. They had grown up believing they were special, chosen. Above the violence that touched lesser species, they woke up one morning to find human ships in their sky. Admiral Tanaka had brought her entire fleet. 300 warships surrounded the planet. Their weapons were aimed at military targets only. But the threat was clear. Aethon Prime could be destroyed in hours if the humans wished it. High Archon Zethval stood in his throne room and watched his world's defenses crumble. The orbital stations fell first, then the defense platforms, then the last of his personal fleet. In less than a day, the humans controlled the space around his planet. Your Eminence, his chief advisor said, his voice shaking. We must negotiate. The humans have won. If we surrender now, perhaps they will show mercy. Zethval did not respond. He stared out the window at the human ships. After 300 years of absolute power, he could not accept what was happening. He had ruled an empire that stretched across 10,000 worlds. He had crushed 100 rebellions. He had killed billions. And now a species he had considered insects was about to take everything from him. They will not show mercy, he said quietly. I would not. Why should they? He remembered New Eden. He remembered the broadcast. He remembered the way he had smiled as 10 billion humans burned. The humans would remember too. Admiral Tanaka's voice came over every channel on the planet. People of Aethon Prime, she said. "We are not here to destroy you. We are here for justice. Surrender your military forces and hand over the criminals responsible for New Eden. Do this, and your civilians will not be harmed. You have 1 hour." In homes across the planet, Valkorians looked at each other in confusion. They had expected death. They had expected revenge. They had expected to be treated the way their empire had treated others. Instead, the humans were offering them a chance. Zethval's advisors begged him to accept. His generals pleaded with him to surrender. Even his own family sent messages asking him to save their people. He refused. "I am the High Archon," he said. "I do not surrender to cattle." He ordered his personal guard to prepare for a final stand. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. He would not give the humans the satisfaction of seeing him beg. When the hour ended, Admiral Tanaka gave the order. The human ground assault began at dawn. Drop ships fell from the sky like rain. Human soldiers poured out of them by the thousands. They moved through the streets of the capital city with cold efficiency, overwhelming Dominion defenders at every turn. But something strange happened. The humans did not kill everyone they met. Valkorian civilians who did not resist were passed by. Soldiers who surrendered were taken prisoner, not executed. When human troops found a hospital, they posted guards to protect it. When they found a school, they made sure the children inside were safe. The ordinary people of Aethon Prime watched in amazement. This was not how conquerors behaved. This was not what they had been taught about lesser species. The humans were not acting like monsters. They were acting like something the Valkorians had forgotten existed. Heroes. The battle for the Imperial Citadel lasted 6 hours. Zethval's personal guard was the best in the Dominion. They had never lost a fight. They lost this one. Admiral Tanaka led the final assault herself. She did not have to. She could have commanded from orbit. But she had made a promise to herself on the day New Eden died. She would look into Zethval's eyes when he fell. The throne room doors exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through the gap, weapons ready. They found Zethval standing alone in front of his throne. His guards lay dead around him. His weapons were gone. He looked at Tanaka with cold, empty eyes. "So," he said, "the cattle have come to slaughter the farmer. How fitting." Tanaka walked toward him slowly. She thought about her daughter, her grandchildren. 10 billion souls who had died screaming while this creature watched and smiled. She thought about pulling her weapon and ending him right here. She did not. "You're not worth the bullet," she said. "You're going to stand trial. Every species you've ever hurt is going to tell the galaxy what you did, and then you're going to spend the rest of your life watching the empire you built crumble into dust." Zethval's face twisted with rage. "You cannot do this to me. I am the High Archon. I am eternal. The Dominion will rise again, and—" "The Dominion is over," Tanaka interrupted. Her voice was quiet, but it silenced him. "You're just too proud to see it." She turned to her soldiers. "Take him." The trial of High Archon Zethval was broadcast across the galaxy. Representatives from 200 species came to testify. They spoke about massacres and slave camps. They spoke about families torn apart and worlds destroyed. They spoke about 10,000 years of cruelty. The evidence was overwhelming. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty. But humanity did not execute him. That would have been too easy, too similar to what he had done. Instead, they gave him irrelevance. Zethval was imprisoned on a small moon far from anywhere important. He was given a single screen that showed news from across the galaxy. He was forced to watch as everything he had built was taken apart. The Dominion was dissolved. Its military was destroyed. Its leaders were scattered to face justice on the worlds they had wronged. The species that had been slaves became free. The galaxy that had lived in fear began to heal. And Zethval watched all of it, alone and forgotten. Humanity could have taken the Dominion's throne. Many species expected it. Some even wanted it. The humans had proven they were strong enough. They had the ships, the weapons, the armies. Admiral Tanaka refused. "We didn't fight for power," she said in her final address to the galaxy. "We fought because someone had to stand up." We fought because 10 billion voices cried out and were silenced, and we decided the universe would hear them anyway. She looked directly into the camera. Let this be humanity's legacy. We don't want to rule the stars. We just refuse to let tyrants do it unchallenged. The humans went home. They rebuilt their colony worlds. They mourned their dead. They tried to find peace after so much war. A memorial was built on the scarred surface of New Eden. 10 billion names were carved into black stone pillars that stretched toward the sky. The pillars were so tall, they could be seen from orbit. Species from across the galaxy made pilgrimages there. They came to pay respects to the dead. They came to thank the species that had avenged them. They came to remember what one people had sacrificed so that others could be free. Admiral Yuki Tanaka retired from the military. She was offered awards and titles. She refused them all. She moved to a small house on Earth, near the ocean. She spent her days watching the waves and thinking about the people she had lost. One day, a young Kreth came to visit her. The Kreth had traveled across the galaxy just to say 2 words. Thank you. Tanaka looked at the young alien for a long moment. She thought about New Eden. She thought about her family. She thought about all the death and pain and rage. And she smiled. Don't thank me, she said. Just make sure it was worth it. Build a better galaxy. That's all the thanks I need. The Kreth nodded and left. Tanaka watched her go. The war was over. The tyrant had fallen. The slaves were free, but the galaxy was not fully healed. There would be more tyrants, more cruelty, more darkness. It was the way of the universe. And somewhere in that darkness, species remembered what had happened when one empire had gone too far. They remembered what humanity had done. They remembered the price the Dominion had paid. A new saying spread among the stars. It was whispered in dark corners and shouted in crowded squares. It was written on walls and tattooed on